All right, so we're going to go through the document, finding and hiring good contractors. Let's first start with finding good contractors, because this is like a big piece of this. I want you to think of finding contractors just like the same kind of methods we use to find deals. It all starts with like generating leads, right? When you're trying to find a lot of houses to flip, what do? We market, we go to MLS, we look for deals essentially. Contractors actually have more value than a deal. So if you found one contractor that can do 6 or 7 houses a year for you, you look at it as that person being a team member who could make you anywhere from 130 to 170K a year. So finding one really good, say GC who could do everything, or maybe a good plumber who could be part of the equation for finding, a team, as you're building this team, you're building a team that's going to make you money. And when you think about it like that, it's very interesting how much energy, how much money we spend on marketing for deals, but how little energy and marketing money and dollars we spend on contractors. By the way, me included. So I will tell you that in the years I've been doing this, I've spent, nothing less than $1 million in marketing. And I can't even tell you, like, I've probably not spent $20,000 marketing for contractors. So, when you really think about that, it's the reason that I today am just barely getting my team together and really have an amazing team. It's taken years to develop them. But so the key is really starting to figure out how do we market for them. So I'll start running down the list. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll pull this up. It seems like it's actually bigger if I leave it the other way. So funny enough, it actually gets smaller. So I'm going to leave it like that then. So first is I put ads on Craigslist, and I think you told me it's starting to cost money. There's always a free place on Craigslist. Look where other people are putting ads for like work, gigs, contractors, handyman, real estate section. All those sections work, but wherever contractors are posting ads is where you want to post, is just saying like, hey, looking for a good plumber. Or you don't necessarily have to post an ad if it costs money. You can actually go and look for their ads that they're posting. And then you can just get on the phone and call them, because that works. And there's always Craigslist. There's not Craigslist. There's a Backpage. There's always some place where contractors or people are meeting. What I would not mess with would be like Angie's List or any of those big name things, because they're usually like retail contractors. They tend to like really service more of a retail person. So we're always looking where the wholesale people would be. Secondarily, and I've gotten a decent amount of contractors from this, is posting on the local meetup groups or REI club message boards. So I'm a member of every meetup group locally that makes any sense. And of those meetup groups, about 30 or 40% of them run pretty active message boards where every day there's 50 or 60 messages on there. And often if you just put on looking for a good plumber, does anyone have referrals? You'd be surprised how many people. And there's even contractors that go on there and market themselves. So there's a decent amount of opportunity there to at least get people in front of you. The one thing I told you about the other day, and if you're in PA, it might be a little different, but in Maryland, you can actually take and go and look for all the most recent flips on the MLS, pull those addresses and take those addresses and put them in an Excel spreadsheet, and then go on to the for us, we use Maryland Department of licensing, or like the permit, Baltimore City, the permit department. You can go online and look at the permits. You can do this in PG County, Baltimore City, AA County, and you can see the permits that have been pulled. And when you see the permit for the specific address, it'll show you these are the permits that were pulled. And when you click onto that permit, it usually will have the contractor's name and phone number. So the reason it has that is because they have to list the contractor's information for people to know what it is. Now, if you have the contractor's name and phone number, it's real easy to go ahead and get his name, give him a call and say, hey, I noticed you did this flip. Do you usually work with contractors? If so, I'd love to get an estimate, see if he's available. The reason that we focus on doing this with flips and not with everything else is because, if we can find a house that's been flipped, then maybe that flipper has already done some qualification for us. Maybe that flipper's done a good job of qualifying and figuring out whether this person's any good, but not necessarily. But it's definitely a way of filtering, right? If we just went out and we talked to a million contractors pretty randomly, most contractors are retail contractors, not wholesale contractors. But we can make an assumption that if they are doing it for a rehabber, that, some percentage of the time, I would say more often than not, they actually are wholesale contractors, but not always. There is a decent amount of time that they're not wholesalers. So just keep that in mind. So also look, after you do that, you can also ask the agent. Let's just say that you find that listing and you can't, you're in Pennsylvania and there's no way for you to do this. then go and call the agent and ask them for a referral. You'd be surprised if you called 10 or 15 agents a day, you'd be surprised how many of them are willing to just give you a referral, someone they work with. And maybe you make a relationship with that agent if they give you referrals, and they do the listing on the back end potentially. That's always something that's possible, because if you're not going to list it yourself, you'll need an agent to list it. Either way, agents are usually more than willing to help you out, because they know if they're cool with you and they do something nice, that you might send them a referral in the future. It's that kind of business. So referrals are very important. And, even if they just might do that. So I found that to be very useful. Also find local wholesale suppliers and call them and ask them for referrals. So every trade has a wholesale supplier. So if you're looking for plumbers, what we want to do is we want to look for, like, where do the plumbers buy their materials? Where do plumbers buy the cheapest materials? Home Depot and Lowe's is not the answer to that question usually. Usually there's, like for us, there's Ferguson's. Ferguson's is nationwide, so they could be a Ferguson's in Pennsylvania, any other state. But Ferguson's is a plumbing supply place that a lot of the plumbers go to work at. Now, if you call, I don't think they can give you referrals, but you could ask them, hey, is there plumbers that hang around in the morning, in the afternoon, or a certain time of day that would be good to come there, to where I could maybe connect with some plumbers? And often they'll tell you, because I know that Dave's brother works at Ferguson's, and he says there's a certain time of day where, like, all the plumbers are there. He's not allowed to do referrals, but he certainly could, like, say, hey, stop down, and there'd be 4 or 5 plumbers that are more wholesale, kind of plumbers like that you want to work with. So keeping that in mind, that works really well. That works really well for wholesale building materials, because the guys that do the work and are consistently doing work, especially for flippers, are consistently every day in and out of these places. So they definitely are going to be there. So look for those suppliers. They're not easy to find, but when you do find them, you might be able to get. And again, this is always, we're just solving to find this stuff. I've also done this where I've placed bandit signs around Home Depot, just saying something along the lines of, like, looking for a contractor to work on my flip. Or looking for subcontractors to do work, anything like that. Please call if you're looking for work or something. You have any ideas what you think would be a good one?
For a bandit sign, you mean?
Yeah, for a bandit sign. I mean, what message, that maybe a simple message that would attract attention to contractors?
Yeah, I mean, I would just put on there something simple that they can see as they're driving by it, like like you said, like electrical contractor needed, HVAC contractor needed.
Yeah,
call ASAP, and then put my phone number on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, anything you might want to put, like electrical contractor needed, general contractor needed, handyman needed, carpentry needed, good pay, something like that. Good pay, looking for carpentry contractor. I mean, anything you put like that, if you're putting it out consistently, Home Depot, they are there a decent amount. Even though they buy from these other wholesalers, the contractors do end up at Home Depot quite often. If you can't get referrals from those wholesale companies too, if you know where they are, you could easily put signs out by them. So if you're looking for a plumber and you go to, like, Ferguson's, putting signs around that would be a pretty good idea. A neat thing is Ferguson's in Glen Burnie actually happens to be right next to Home Depot. So they do tend to try to be around Home Depots or Lowe's, because they always want to be close to, like, the local store where their guys are going often. So I feel like it's almost like they're competing with them a little bit. And they are, by the way, they are trying to get all that business. So that's one thing you can do. The bandit signs are cheap. You don't have to put a million out. I mean, you could literally go once a week, every Friday, every Monday morning, before they're going to start work on Monday morning, and put them out to where they'll see them for a few days. All those things work. And I mean, if you were to take 20 minutes to put signs out around these locations, it would probably get you a decent amount of phone calls. Ask other flippers. You told me you got a couple of good referrals from other flippers. You'd be surprised how many flippers are willing to give you referrals. I mean, if they aren't currently flipping a ton, maybe they want to keep their guys busy. Maybe they really want to help their guys out because they don't have enough work for them. Sometimes even when they really need guys, people, just because you ask them, will give their referrals. Surprisingly, I've had people text me on a regular basis saying, hey, can you refer me, like, your contractor? And I'm just like, no, but it's funny that they asked. And I bet that someone's like, okay, because they just don't want to say no. Essentially, people don't like to say no. So you'd be surprised, like, if you start to hook up with other flippers and you ask for referrals, how many referrals you could get from that. I mean, even that message board on the REI groups or the meetup groups or just other investors, like just sharing information. I've actually referred people who I know I can refer, like my granite guy. I've referred a couple different people that are good, because I know they can handle the additional work. So I just love to send them business. Now, I'm not for my main guy, but that's doing like contracting work who's backed up or anything. But if I have someone who's not busy, I generally will refer my, like, say, B level people who I've not been able to keep busy, so I can, throw them a bone because they've done a good job for me. So asking other flippers definitely works. It might sound like it wouldn't, but it definitely does. And then once you have contractors, asking your contractors for referrals of people they like to work with. So you've told me that you've gotten a couple people who are, you think are pretty good. Like I think waterproofer, right? Your waterproofer might be, he just might be a fountain of amazing information. The fact that he says, I work with a lot of flippers, means that he definitely knows a lot of contractors and could really help you out. I mean, if you pick his brain and press on him, I doubt that he would not want to find like a framer or a demo guy who demos properly, right? Any of these things he's probably going to want to do. And if you say, hey, because I want to find guys that you work well with, you're a really great contractor, I want to build my team around you, then often they'll be like, cool, yeah, here, this is where I found my plumber I've been working with for 6 years. My electrician referred me to him, and he's like, hey, I do a bunch of work for other flippers, and they use this plumber, and he seems to be the guy, and I really like working with him. You want to give him a shot? And I gave him a shot, and Jesse's been working with me ever since, and that was like 6.5, 7 years ago. So they know the other flippers are using, and the really good contractors usually don't work with just one flipper. They usually work with a couple. So they're the guys that really got their pricing down. The guys that have the ability to work for 2 or 3 different flippers. It means that they've got pricing that works for like almost any flipper. So this particular guy ends up being like the plumber / HVAC guy for a lot of flippers, and it was kind of awesome. And it's a really good thing to find. So referrals from your current guys, I would say out of everything I've done, the number one thing that has yielded me people I've worked with for many, many years has been asking my other good contractors, not my crappy ones, by the way, because these guys travel in groups together. So if you ask your crappy contractors, you'll probably get a crappy referral. But if you get a guy or get a couple people that you really like and you think they're awesome, well, they probably know other awesome people. So with all this, I would create a Google Voice number for all your ads that you use for contractors, and don't change it. Just one's fine. The reason I say that is that sometimes when you put ads on all these sites, you could get a lot of phone calls. And you want to be in control when you take those phone calls. You don't want your phone blowing up with random people. So you could have that forward to you if you're in need, or if you want to take a break from it, you can turn it off for a couple of days and just let the messages pile up. But ultimately, your phone's not going to go crazy. I've put ads on Craigslist for like a carpentry person before, and my phone, like 35 people call me in one night sometimes, and that's like a little hard to take, and they call at all times and all hours. So Google Voice is free. Use that. That's my advice that I learned the hard way.
Yeah, no, I actually already use a Google Voice number for all my real estate stuff. So yeah.
Perfect. Then, well, don't use that one. Pick a specific one for contractors, because you might have to like burn it down if it gets too out of hand. So don't anything you have of value that you want stuff to come in. Just create another number under your wife's number or someone else's, or sometimes you can get more than one number with a different email. But just get one that's specifically for marketing to contractors. So like when you need some contractors, you go in there and listen to your voicemails and start calling people.
Okay.
You'll oddly see people calling you if you're doing a lot of marketing and you're doing a lot of this. You'll oddly see people calling you like months later. Sometimes they saved your number, so that it's always kind of cool to have that. So a couple things. Let's go into qualifying contractors. This is another big piece. Once you generate the leads, now it's time that you need to talk to them and start deciding how they're, or whether they're worth talking to or meeting for an estimate. When you're new, I would say my mistake I made was anyone who said they wanted to give me an estimate, I met them at the house and got an estimate. And if you're willing to, meet 15 or 20 people, that probably makes sense and will work. And, it's just going to be, if you think about doing that for all the trades, that can be quite a job. It might take you months to do that. I can tell you that I've had times where I would just spend full days at the rehab meeting like 20, 30 contractors in just one day. And of that, I would yield like 1 or 2 guys that would actually end up doing work for me. So it is those kind of numbers. It's much like leads. When you get 20 leads, you're probably going to get maybe a rehab out of it or a wholesale deal. 19 of them are going to, not be a fit. Or maybe you make an offer on 1 or 2 and like 15 or 16 of them are just going to be complete crap. But you still have to work all 15 or 16 or all 20 in order to get the 2 that matter. So what we always want to do, since we know it's a volume game and that we need to get on the phone and have many, many conversations, we want to find ways to have conversations that are, I would say, that are meaningful. So we also want to have a way to create like our gut feeling around who's going to be good to work with and who's not going to be to work with. So qualifying these contractors is essentially how I do it and how I get a feel for whether someone's like completely worth working with or not. That's one of the things to think about. So I'm recording.
Is that Delonte making all that noise in there?
Yeah, man. So he's going to have to like edit all that out now in the middle of the video. So anyhow, that's basically taking and talking about like, so first I'd say, tell me about who you work for now. So obviously they should be doing work. And if you can find a little bit about who they're working for. So the thing that I love when I hear, and I'll go with the best response you could hear is I work with like, I basically specialize and work with a lot of flippers, right? I mean, if you hear that, like I only work with flippers, then that's really amazing. If someone's really good to work with, the guys that have been best to work with are people who have worked for my competitors, like big name competitors. Like for me, Dominion is one of my big competitors. So if someone's like, hey, I've worked for Dominion for 4 years and maybe they mess with my money or something and I'm looking to go with another company, that's really amazing. Or I work with a couple different flippers and I'm able to stay busy that way and I'm just looking to add some more work. That's an amazing answer. The second best answer is I work with like, you say maybe a property management company, or I work with landlords. I do a lot of landlord work. So essentially we are still thinking more wholesale. You see the common denominator between the two is that they're working for other people predominantly that are wholesale pricing people, not retail pricing people. What we would want to not hear is that I work for homeowners, but I'm looking to make a change or, I'm not saying that might not work, but it is really hard to find someone who has built their business around working with retail people. They just aren't going to have, they're ultimately going to have spent a lot of their money buying really fancy trucks. Their crews are going to be often more American or more what they would consider like the more acceptable employee. Because if you get like an American kid or American trained person who has like, a polo shirt and some khakis because he's going into $1 million houses, he's no better than the guy that makes like $150 a day that is like really good at what he does but doesn't speak English. And because some people don't want foreigners in their house, because they're racist, then like, they're just going to not be a bit of a fit. So what we want to do is focus on the people that like, a lot of like my plumber I was telling you about or different people, like, they're not always like, they're not super professional. They're not going to go work in like $1 million waterfronts, but they are very good at working with flippers because we don't really care much about that. We don't care what they do, as long as that they can do the work and that they're reliable and show up is more what we care about. Where when you work on really high end stuff and someone's charging more of a retail price, well, they're usually hiring people that fit that brand, that persona that's necessary in order to charge, triple what the other guy charges. They're going to bring in people that look like they're off HGTV essentially, right? They're going to kind of like have these cool looking people because that matters. They're also going to have like $70,000 trucks with big signs on them and all that. They're going to be spending a lot of money on marketing, all those things. So like a great example is one of the biggest waterproofers in our state is B-Dry. And I think they're probably multi-state. They might even be in your state, but B-Dry is like a huge waterproofing company. I called when I was new to this and got an estimate from them because I think I told you guys about the first major foundation problem that I dealt with. It ended up being one of my best profits to date. I think it still is the best profit I've ever made on a house. That house, what was so neat about it is that I got a ton of retail estimates, and more what I was trying to accomplish was I was trying to get a feel for how the process worked. So the only people that were easy to get out, that were really eager and willing to get out, were people from like B-Dry and all these big companies. And the reason why is because they had sales reps. So they had no problem like scheduling an appointment, presenting, showing me their technology that has a lifetime warranty on it. I mean, they had a computer where they're presenting with a slide. I mean, it was very high end, but then they hit me with the price, and the price is like, oh yeah, it'd just be $27,000. But I'm like, what? I'm like confused, but you get a lifetime warranty and everyone else sucks because they're using this old, crap that'll last you like 3 days. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. $27,000 though. I'm cheap. I can't even deal with that. But what I was able to do is get a really good feel for how they waterproof, what they did. And as I talked to like 10 or 15 people, I understood how waterproofing worked really well. And you can watch a bunch of YouTube videos and do the same thing. But getting estimates is a great way to, really absorb knowledge from people. So don't just say, hey, give me a price on this. Say, tell me a little bit about, what you're going to do and how it works and what your process is. And then if they're explaining, people love to talk about how they're going to do this and I do this. Here's how I'm different. And you just start to learn about that trade. But what I will say that I figured out about B-Dry is that one of the reasons they charge triple is because they spend a lot of money marketing. The reason they came up and I found them so easily is because they're spending like, $150K a month or more on marketing. So, with that, they have to charge 3 times more. So funny enough, the people that you'll easily find when you go on the internet are the exact opposite people that you do want to find. They're the people that are almost always going to cost more because essentially if you can find them easily, it means they have a big budget for marketing. Now, the people we have to work hardest to find and connect with that are the hardest to connect with are actually the perfect people to connect with, by the way. I did leave one thing out, by the way, in the finding people is posting on your Facebook page actually is something you can do. And you can also go on Facebook, and I don't know if you know this, but and I'll actually add this in because it's a really powerful one. I haven't used this yet because I have a pretty deep contractor base right now, but this works really well. You can find people based on what their profession is on Facebook. So you could set up ads for really cheap and literally just saying, looking for a general contractor, or you might just be able to pop in and look for people that say they're general contractors or they're contractors, and then basically just private message them. Say, hey man, do you work with house flippers? Do you have any experience working with house flippers? Hey, I've seen you're a contractor. Do you have any experience working with house flippers? If you did 10 or 15 of those a day, you would start to get responses, right? You'd have people calling you back because look, everyone wants business. And when we reach out to people and we market to them, that's not something they're used to. I don't think many people are used to having someone market to them to give them work. But we do because we want to have abundance so we can pick through and get the A players. We're weeding through so we can get down to the people that are really awesome and easy to work with and can do a good job and who can sustain that good work. So telling me a little bit about who you work for now, right? That's really important. If they say they're working, so it says we're searching to see who they're working for, retail or wholesale clients. So again, we want to know like if they're like, well, I've worked with a landlord here and there, but I mostly do retail. Now, okay, everyone's probably worked with a landlord before or worked with a discount realtor or something like that, but that doesn't mean they're cheap. That doesn't mean they're even reasonable. It just means that when they get slow, they're willing to, sell their soul to the devil. The reason that this doesn't work for us is because essentially they're always going to look at you as like, I'll do it if I'm slow. They're always going to like feel like you're getting a deal. I'm looking for the guy who is like, look, I install HVAC units and I provide the material for $2,700 and that's my price, period. I have standardized pricing because I work, and this is what I charge all flippers, right? This is my price versus the person that's like, well, I have to give you an estimate, Scott. I couldn't tell you that, Scott. Hey, so how much do you charge per foot? So what we do, here's another one, create standardized pricing for a few items so you can see if they're in the ballpark. So this is basically what we said. So if they're an HVAC guy, it's easy to call up and say, look, what do you charge to put a unit in? What's your cheapest bottom line unit and your best pricing? Do you have investor pricing? And do you have investor pricing for a unit like that? Do you work? If they're like, well, we don't use cheap stuff, we only use the good stuff, then you can easily say, is that because you work with homeowners? I mean, do you have any discount stuff that you put, or any kind of discount packaging that you put together for investors? Something where, because investors don't care if it's a really good quality brand. We don't buy brand names. We buy the off brand names that are just as good, that cost a lot less money because they're not marketed as well. Like I guess we'll call it like the Kirkland, right? You go to Costco, everything's Kirkland. Tastes the same to me, obviously, but if you buy like, one of the brand names, you're going to pay 30-40% more for the same stuff. But there's no, Kirkland is not marketing anything. I don't think they have any commercials or anything to pay for, so they're able to sell the same product for cheaper. And that's what we're looking for out of our contractors. We want to make sure. So there's a couple things that are easy to create standardized pricing on. I think that if you're looking for general work, like general carpentry work, you could always ask like, Do you hang sheetrock? And they're like, yeah, I hang sheetrock. Well, is this something you're good at, or is it something you actually hire out, or do you do it yourself? If they're like, I hire it out, then you don't want them to do sheetrock. You want them doing the work themselves. You want to hire the people that do sheetrock for a living. The fastest way to know whether they actually are doing it or not is how cheap they are. Believe it or not, when you find a really good sheetrock guy, this is so counterintuitive, by the way. There's a really big lesson in this. Really good people are cheaper than really crappy people. Does that make sense?
It kind of makes sense because they understand their pricing.
They understand their pricing, but if they're subcontractors, they usually just are like, look, this is what I charge and this is what I get paid by contractors. So they're just like, okay, here's where I'm at. Where when you get someone that's more like ambiguous about their pricing and like basically just seeing what they can charge you, well, that tends to be more of a retail person who's used to going in and seeing what someone's willing to pay. So also when they don't have standardized pricing, you also, that's another clue that they're more retail, because, retail people come in, they just pluck numbers out the sky essentially. They essentially run their numbers and they're like, it's going to cost me $2,500 to, let's say it's going to cost me $3,500 to do this waterproofing job. And I need to have a 30 or 40% gross profit margin added to that so I can make it in this business. So what we're really looking for is someone who's like, it's going to cost me $3,500 to do this. I'm okay making like 7,500 on that, or making like maybe 1,500 on it. So I'll charge 5K. And by the way, my guy made like 5K, the guy that I've used for years. So 5K is a very reasonable price to waterproof a basement. 6,500 is not too bad either. But you get estimates, and I promise you could find estimates anywhere from 12 to like 20 plus $1,000 for the same job. And will it be any better? Nope. Your guide's doing it for 6,500, probably works for B-Dry and subcontracts, and B-Dry is only paying him like 6,500. This is the thing most people don't understand, is that contractors are paying him as a subcontractor to come do the work for 6,500, and then they're charging you 20K. So you don't really get any extra value by paying all that extra money. So when people tell me like they can't get things for cheap as I get it, well, look, there's pretty standardized pricing. I don't demand any cheaper pricing because I do more volume. And like I've even told you guys before, I think I might even pay a little more because I have to be a little bit more picky and I need people that are more self-sustainable since I have a bigger company running. But for the most part, most things are standardized. And a great standardized pricing would be like laying tile or laying hardwood. If you lay hardwood, you usually get paid about $1.50 a foot to lay hardwood. If you lay laminate floor, it's like $1.25. If you lay tile, it's like, $2.25 to $3 a foot, usually somewhere in that ballpark, right? So they can go to a flooring store and get paid that as a subcontractor. So if, you're trying to pay them, say $1.75, well, I could be like, well, you know what? I'm going to give you a lot of work. And they're going to be like, so what? Freaking next day floors could give me all the work I want for $2.25. And I could just go to work every day like an employee. Why would I take $1.75 from you? So usually the only people that you get for $1.75 are pretty much like crackheads, that just like can't work for next day floor because like they're driving around with like a suspended license and they got child support on them or something. You're going to get like the worst of the worst. I've worked with the worst of the worst, and is that a really good way to keep like pricing down. But essentially when you're working with like really unreliable people, you pretty much are managing them. And that's why you get that discount. You have to be there every day with them. You have to, sometimes I'd be picking people up, providing tools. I mean, I pretty much was just a general contractor essentially back when I would get this kind of pricing. So I quickly opted out of that over the years, realizing I couldn't scale my business and run it very easily if I hired those types of people. So now what I'm looking for is more the people that are willing to work for a subcontractor price. And then that might even be a great question to ask. Do you do any subcontracting, and what is your pricing? Because look, subcontractors know what they get paid. I can tell you when I was a flooring subcontractor, that's what I did before this. When I did hardwood, I got paid like $1.25 a foot. When I did laminate at the time, it was $1.75 a foot. If I did tile, they would usually pay me $2.50 a foot. And I did hardwood sanding, I'd usually get about $2 to $2.25 a foot. So that's about the pricing that I pay these days. Laying carpet. Steve used to be a carpet installer before he became my project manager, and he got paid $4 to $5 a square yard to install carpet. For that price, he could work all day. Now, what do you think my carpet guys charge me? My carpet guys work for Empire Carpet, and essentially, if I schedule them a week out, they come do the carpet for like, I don't know, $4 or $5 a yard. I don't know which we've agreed upon, but it's something in that ballpark. You know, if they're getting $4 from Empire, I can give them like 5, which is like most houses are only about 150 yards. So it's like an extra $150. But, you know, for them, they're like, oh man, it's worth working for Mike because he pays me an extra dollar. By the way, I'm still like getting it really cheap. I mean, they go install 150 yards as a whole house of carpet. Think about that. $5 a yard is essentially paying about $750 for them to install a whole house of carpet. I can go buy that carpet from Home Depot, get a good price on it. I can, you know, when I say that, I look for, you know, our discount, the stuff that we get that's like a discount, and then put like some decent pad together. And I'm about $14 a square yard for installed carpet that way. Also, I found my Empire carpet guy we just hooked up with recently. He's just like, hey, for $14 a yard, I can just provide the carpet for you. I'll measure and do everything. I'm like, that sounds cool too. You know, to stop me from having to place an order and dealing with the order. So standardized pricing is really big because, you know, see, this is an easy conversation to have. And me and you, Scott, we talked about creating a document or creating a video around like, what is the standardized pricing? What kind of conversations? What are some of the things we need to know for each trade? And we're going to do that. That'll be something you can look at. It'll be very informational because it'll help educate you around each subject. But knowing this stuff is really important, and it's a very important part of qualifying your contractors, because if you have some standardized pricing, I can weed people out instantly. If they're like, you know, hey, I do trim, and they're like, well, I don't know, I usually just charge like, you know, X dollars. Look, if you do trim professionally as a subcontractor, you get paid $2 a foot. That's how much trim guys get paid. If you hang doors, you can pay people to hang a door roughly anywhere from like $30 to $50 a door. $50 would be very generous, by the way. It takes 20 to 25 minutes to hang in a pre-hung door. So $50 is pretty good. That's about $100 an hour, $125 an hour, and you can get a middle level skilled person to hang a door in a half hour. I had guys I paid about $100 a day hanging doors in like a half hour, and I timed it and did everything just to know. So that's when I had employees back in the day. But now I don't do that anymore because they're very hard to control and take a lot of my time. So I don't do that. So create some standardized pricing around a few different things. That's very helpful. Also find out what they specialize in. So there's a specific reason I say this. A lot of guys are like, I would say that a good analogy for contractors is they're like goldfish, right? If you drop the whole bottle of food in a goldfish bowl, what happens?
The fish eat all the food.
What happens? I think you had the right answer, but I can't. It broke for a second.
The fish eat all the food
Until they die, right? And they blow up. Well, there you go. That's how you kill a contractor, is you give them more work than they can handle. So part of our job is to understand what they're good at, understand what they specialize in. Look, all of us have things you're better at. I could sand floors, but I have to be honest, I kind of suck as a floor sander. When I did it, I was slow at it. I didn't really make any money at it. What I was really good at was laying laminate floors and laying hardwood. I was super good. I could also do tile, but I just wasn't as fast at tile because I'd done way more hardwood floor, and laminate I was actually really good. I was a specialist. I could lay like 1,000 square foot of laminate in like a day. So you give me a laminate job, I could make a lot of money. And if you were going to put me in a place where I'd be in my wheelhouse, it'd be like, Mike, I want you to do all of our laminate work. But if you were like, Mike, I want you to do the laminate, but also I'll throw you the sanding, I would take the sanding because I like to have work and I didn't want to be slow. But the reality was it would be way better for you to go like my sanding guy now, like it's cheaper for me to hire him to do it than he charges me $1.75 to $2 a foot. And he's in and out the job in like 2 days. That would take me like 4 days. So he's the better pick for this, right? It makes a lot of sense. And I understood why I didn't make a lot of money sanding floors when I watch him do it, because he's actually really good and he's fast at it because he does it every day. He just does, that's his specialty, floor sanding. He goes, hey, can you do tile? And he's like, no, I sand floors, right? That's what you want to know. That's who you want. You want the specialist, but not specialist like, I'm on the, I won an award for floor sanding, but just the guy that says like I sand floors every day. Like the best people to hire for sheetrock are the guys that do sheetrock. So all of my best sheetrock crews just do sheetrock. They literally stay busy running around. Like GCs, subs will bring them in to hang the sheetrock for them because it's cheaper for them to have them hang sheetrock than it is for them to do it themselves. So like almost all my guys that work for me know how to do sheetrock, but they've been in the last year or so hiring out, at my advice, hiring out the sheetrock because they can get it done for about $15 to $16 a sheet. And that's 15 to 16 that's hung in finish for that price. Now they can do it when there's a couple pieces, like say 30 or 40 pieces, they just do it themselves because the big crews that can pump out a lot of volume don't like to come in for small jobs. So they'll do the small jobs. But if we get like a whole house, it's 200-300 sheets, then you really want to bring in someone that hangs and can come in and knock it all out. I have crews that can do like 200-300 sheets a day hung and have the first coat on it in like 1 or 2 days. So within like 5 days, they're in and out for a job that big. I've also hired some guys that wanted like $20 a sheet, and I come back a week later and it looked like they had 15 sheets hung, and they were like giving me all kind of excuses and nothing was done. And they were hired. Only reason I hired them, I hired them is because I couldn't. My $16 sheet guys were busy, so I needed someone to do it right away. So I ended up paying like an American guy who apparently was on drugs, like $20 a sheet. So of course he's like, I'm ripping him off at 20 a sheet, and he gave me the best deal ever. But the reason it felt like the best deal ever is because he didn't really know what he was doing. I mean, he really was there like a lot of hours and got nothing done because everyone thinks they know how to hang sheetrock. Everyone thinks they know how to paint. Everyone thinks they know how to lay tile, how to do trim. But are they good at it is a whole different story. And that's why I tell you the story of me. Like, I knew how to sand and I even had all the equipment, but I kind of sucked at it, being honest. And that's why I never really made a lot of profit when I did it. So, personally, if you would have had me sanding a bunch, I would have got out of flooring even sooner than I did. So I'm glad I didn't do a lot of it because I really was bad at it and I sucked a lot about it. So standardized pricing, asking them what they specialize in is really good. Ask about their business structure. So essentially what I mean by that is, hey, tell me a little bit about you. And, when they're like, what do you mean? Oh, well, yeah, do you do the work or do you hire out guys? Or are you like a GC? How many guys do you work with on a regular day? Or is it you? And what we're looking for is a guy that has like 2 or 3 workers with them, and they work with that person. So they go pick all these workers up. They come to work, and the 4 of them or 3 of them work all day on your house. And then there's one person who manages them and makes sure that they're working, and he pays them like a daily wage. And then he gets paid a premium for wrangling all those guys up, and he'll go get materials for them. But that would be an ideal situation, that the person is working on the job, essentially. What would not be an ideal situation is when somebody says, well, I have a lot of guys, I have a bunch of different electricians, and I'll hire them for you. And then, I'll just take care of everything. Well, no, I don't do the work. I just manage everyone. Because here's the thing. They don't do the work, meaning they're going to go, what are they going to do, right? They're going to go hire the guy that charges $2 a foot to sand floors. And how are they going to make money?
By charging you more.
Yeah, so you're probably going to pay $250 to $275, right? And we don't really have that room to do that. So what we want to really do is go to the source. We don't want to have middlemen in. Also, there's a second reason. Sometimes the money's not even the biggest problem with it. The next biggest problem that I run into a lot is when I have middlemen is they tend to have a hard time controlling the contractor doing the work. So you'll hear a lot of excuses like the electrician didn't do this, that, they didn't show up. Because they're trying to get, what they'll do often is they'll try to go get like the crackhead to do it for less than $1 or $2 a foot because they want to make more money, or maybe they want to give you a price that's competitive of like $2.25. So they'll go try to find someone to do it for $1.50. And when they do, they will find someone for $1.50, and you'll get like basically about 30 cents worth of work. You won't even get $1.50's worth of work. And they'll have to chase those crackheads around. And then the problem is you end up dealing with the inefficiency. You end up dealing with the bad work. You end up dealing with the person not showing up for a week. And then this person goes crazy trying to help you out. So to save everyone trouble, I tell people, look, no middlemen, period. Like if a contractor works for me and they're like, I'll just manage the electrician. I'm like, look, hook me up with them directly. I don't want you making money, but more importantly, I don't want you managing that person. I want you to stay focused on what you're good at and what you like to do. So that's always going to be a big thing for me is ask their business structure. Do they manage a bunch of people, or are they just a guy who does the work and goes and hires a few people so they can get more work done? Is that how they make their living? Doing the work versus selling the work, right? There's many people that sell the work. They're just middlemen. Big thing, if they're super fat, they probably don't do the work. One of the guys that I can tell you that I've hired in the past, and his whole game was always just bringing in goofballs to do work and kind of manage him, was a guy named Fat Rick was his name. I don't even know what his real name is, but we called him Fat Rick, and he's like 400 pounds. And we brought him in on one of the students' jobs recently. He's still a goofball, and he doesn't pay people. and he's really fat. So that's like, I guess I don't want to be like disparaging fat people, but like if they're super fat, then how are they going to come in and like swing the hammer and do the work? Right? I mean, I don't know if like maybe we should just not deal with fat contractors, but I can tell you I haven't had great experience with super fat contractors. It's a physical job. This isn't like, this is a physical job. So as a fat contractor, at best, they're managing people. Doesn't mean they couldn't be a good GC but they're not going to be good at hanging sheetrock all day. Because like if you hang sheetrock and you're working your butt off all day and you're really fast and efficient, you really can't be fat. It's just impossible, right? I don't care. You'd have, you can't even eat as much as it takes to be fat when you're working very efficiently because you're very on point. So if you're fat, I'm sorry, fat contractors, but it's just a thing. I mean, it's true. It's something to keep an eye out for, and look, because we're just solving to see is this person putting the work in or not, and if they are, because I want a guy that has like a 10-year-old pickup truck or a van, and he has a couple guys that he gets from wherever he finds guys from, whether it's Home Depot or whatever, and those guys come work with him, and he has his crew. He's more of a subcontractor. He makes a living. My window guy, he like literally had a truck and he subcontracted for like Window World and did work for me on the side. So, he every day was installing windows with his 2 or 3 guys, right? He was a good fit for that reason. So that's who we're looking for. Okay. So then also if they sound like their pricing is close, then I'll set up an appointment and get an estimate just to establish the relationship. So if they give you standardized pricing and it sounds good and they sound like they're going to be good, something I've experienced is they'll tell you a really good number on the phone or agree with your standardized pricing on the phone. Then when you get out there, it's like double what they said. I don't know if that's similar to your electric guy you were talking about, but I can tell you I've had that where they would like, yeah, I'll do. I had a guy recently that was a friend of my girlfriend, and he basically said that like he would do HVAC systems for $4,500, and I was like, look, you mean the ducts and everything? And he's like, oh, absolutely. And I'm like, that's really cheap. Are you sure $4,500? He's like, yeah, man, you don't understand. I can do this stuff cheap because I don't have no overhead. He just gave me the whole thing, and I'm like, so $4,500, that's ducts everything for a 2.5 ton unit. Yep. And I was like, cool. Well, I'll just call you when I need you. And he's like, well, why don't you let me get in and just, and bid one of the jobs? And I'm like, well, what do you need to bid? It's $4,500, right? He's like, well, I just want to see it, make sure everything looks good in case there's anything different. Where do you think he came in at? I'm going to hit this light real quick, but where do you think he came in at, Scott?
Probably 9,000 to 10,000.
Yeah, something like that. I don't even remember, but it was the dumbest conversation I ever had because I'm the kind of guy that asks like 10 times when you tell me something that don't make sense. Because I'm just like, it don't make sense. I see holes in stories. He came in at like 8K or something. And he told me like, man, I'm giving you such a good deal. You don't understand. And, oh man, like, come on, man, this is cheap, man. Like I'm hooking you up. And I'm like, dude, I pay $5,000, man. You told me you would beat my guys and do it for $4,500. I understand that $8,000 sounds fair to you, but at the end of the day, why would I pay you $8,000 when I can get it done for $5,000? Like, yeah, but I'm gonna do a good job. You should hook me up. And I'm like, dude, I'm not just writing you a $3,000 gift. I mean, just for me, I would like be out of this business if I did that. And I found like, man, it was a really painful phone call because the guy bugged the shit out of me and wasted a bunch of my time. That doesn't happen all the time, but it's not uncommon. So yes, you do need to get some people out there. And that's what this part's about. You tell you a number, it sounds right, get them to come out and measure. And if all that works out, then you got someone to do the work. The second we start thinking this way, we start thinking like standardized pricing and getting on the phone and finding these subcontractors, we're good to go. Because keep in mind, most of this work, we don't need licensed people. And that's where you find subcontractors.
What are you drinking there? That looked like windshield washer fluid.
It does kind of look like it. It's actually amino acids. I'm going to it could be windshield wiper fluid. I don't know. That stuff, it doesn't freeze in the winter. It's like amino acids. They don't have any calories or anything. I'm on a fast today, so I'm not eating until tomorrow at lunch. I'm on like a 40-hour fast. So I'm able to drink some coffee and some amino acids because there's no sugar, no calories in it. But it also keeps me from dying, I think, because 40 hours no food is quite a long time.
Yeah, all that.
My energy level up. I tell you, when you don't eat, you have more energy. It's pretty interesting how that works. I would have never guessed. My energy level is like sky high right now. It's 7:22 at night, and I literally am. That's why I scheduled this late, because on my fast day, I like to work until I go to bed. So, because I have so much energy, if I don't work until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, then I can't sleep. because it's really weird when your body doesn't have food to process. It allows you to have like all this energy you never thought you had because it starts burning fat for energy. And that's a really amazing energy source. Sounds crazy, but it really is something I thought was crazy. And as I tried it, I was like, wow, that's very true. So if let's get back to this, but if basically pricing, so if that pricing sounds good, get them out there. If, you know, all we're really doing is creating a price sheet of what we pay. Like I said, think of Home Depot, Lowe's. They're not getting estimates. They're just creating pricing. And once you create this standardized pricing throughout your whole rehab, then this really gets easy. You know, you don't have to get people out. Like, you know, you can have a 3-minute conversation on the phone. You can even put it in your marketing. Like, hey, I pay this. I'm looking for an HVAC guy who can provide a 2.5 ton unit and you know, and charge me $3,000. Don't care what the brand is. That's going to include you doing the installation, the line set, and taking away the old thing, right? You could throw that on Craigslist now. You could stop even asking like, hey, call me if you do HVAC. Call me if you can work for this price. If you got your shit together and can work with a house flipper, and I'm going to give you volume of work. And you could, if you don't have a volume of work and maybe you're new like you are, Scott, then refer them out to other people, right? Give them to other people locally. If any of the students locally, I'm like, hey, give them to me. I'll throw them some work, or other students, share them with the other students. So you can keep them busy and you know, you can keep building the relationship. Now it works that way. Had HVAC guys for 4,500 would do ducts and everything for 4,500. The guy was doing 1,000 units a year. He ended up burning out and like not being in the business because that was pretty cheap, $4,500. But he was doing $4,500 for a whole unit and all the ducts. And he was literally working with like so many house flippers from here to Virginia. He was doing 1,000 units a year. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's a lot of volume.
Yeah, if he just would have bumped that price up to like 5,200 or 5,000, he would have been good, man. I think he would have made it, but 4,500 wasn't enough. So he was definitely going crazy. So he's just being a little too cheap. So we always want to, this is a big thing. I've actually had people, if somebody told me they could do sheetrock for $12 a sheet, I just would like not pay them $12 a sheet, because I know that long term, one or two things are going to happen. I mean, the main thing I almost know is going to happen is they're not going to get the job done. I can bet against them getting the job done if they underprice it under a subcontractor price. Subcontractor pricing is the standardized pricing that allows people to make a living when working for you. So when you're a subcontractor, you could make $100,000. You could even maybe make $150,000 if you're really good at what you do. But you know, if you charge less than subcontractor pricing, then you just don't make enough money to pay people to work with you. You don't, you know, you'd be living with all your gas and your vehicles and tools and all that, you just wouldn't make it. So you do, subcontractor pricing is pretty much the bottom of the barrel, minus somebody that's just trying to make like $50 to eat or do drugs or something. You know, obviously you can find anyone to do that, and that's the nightmare stuff you want to stay away from. So any questions around qualifying contractors?
No, I mean, yeah, I think maybe when we, like you said, when we have our discussion about the trade, maybe we can go into a little bit more detail about some specific standardized pricing items for each trade.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then we'll talk about everything you need to know. I mean, that might be about an hour and a half, but if we do that, I think we can really get into that. And so I mean, we could really take a lot from there. And I'll definitely, I have like so much knowledge around that subject over doing so many flips that I could really fill that out. I think it'd be helpful. It'd be a lot for you to take in, but if you hear it one time, then it could be super valuable to you. And that really is the key, right? I would say if you've not done a million flips, and many people are going to be listening to this have not done a million flips, then fake it till you make it, right? Again, say that, hey, I can create like good pricing or a lot of repeat business because I'm part of a group that does a lot of work. Right. And that's what we get into now. Talk to them about the benefits of working with you. So one of the benefits that I have is that I pay people every week. There's a lot of times when people work for like house flippers or what we'll call commercial. Well, they do like 30-day net. So you do the work now, you put all the money up for the materials and then send me a bill. And in 30 days, I'll pay you. That sucks. So you don't want that, obviously, and no one can usually handle that. When guys are working at subcontractors prices, they can't make it 30 days. You know, so they honestly can't always make it till the end of the week, but they do have every contractor I work with is pretty much like has to pay their guys on Friday. So I need to make sure I'm paying them every Friday and they have the money to keep paying their guys and make a living. So every week I pay them. Right. So that's it. I have also clear, I didn't write this down, but something I just thought of I want to share is that I'm very clear about kind of the work schedule, what you need to do to make money. Kind of clear guidelines, clear communication is really big. So the standardized pricing is really important because when you have standardized pricing, well, the contractor can know what they need to do to make consistent income. So they know if I hang 100 sheets of sheetrock this week, I'm going to make, $15 a sheet. 100 is going to be $1,500, right? That's all I do for the week is hang and finish, 150 sheets of sheetrock. Then I'm getting $1,500 coming to me. Right. So they might look at it like, okay, I can get 3 guys to do that for the week. I pay each of those guys like $500 a week, and that covers those guys. Right. Or maybe, it's even faster than that. Also, I don't make them do a bunch of estimates. So once we get really in tune, I don't even get estimates on many, many things because I have standardized pricing. So if I'm buying a house and it needs sheetrock through the whole house, I don't have the sheetrock guy come out and give me an estimate. I essentially buy the house. I take a pretty educated guess on how many sheets it's going to be based on measuring. And then I save them that energy because we already have standardized pricing. So if they give you any crap about standardized pricing, tell them why it's awesome. Like, hey, I could have you come out to every house I look at, you'd end up doing 5 or 6 estimates and then getting a job. But, I think you're better served making money in the field. Wouldn't you agree? Most people will be like, hell yeah, I agree. And if they don't, well, they're like, I like doing estimates. Well, that's the wrong guy. That's the guy you want. The guy it's like, I hate freaking doing estimates. Because usually they're doing estimates in the evenings and weekends when they should be with their families or, having quality time for themselves. So no one really loves doing estimates. Also, if, they're not always going to get every deal. So someone that's really good at doing estimates or really is very polished and good with customers, well, they should be in the retail market, not in the wholesale market. Guys that are like, man, I am not doing any estimates. Well, they're usually the people that you want to work with. So when you call up a contractor and say, hey, can you give me an estimate? And you're like, yeah, that guy never even showed up. I can tell you most of my guys wouldn't show up for an estimate either. And I'm totally like, that's something that is a common denominator that you want to think about. So if you put them in a scenario where you ask for estimates and then you're like, man, that guy sucked. He never even came. He never even showed up and I was there waiting for him. Well, just know that likely that could be the guy you want because if he's really that sucky at estimates, then he probably is pretty decent at the work. Not guaranteed. He could just be a fuck up on everything. Very possible. But I would say that if they're super on time and they come with that computer and they got like a suit on and pulls up in his $90,000 truck, that's not the guy that's going to really be a fit for us because we can't afford that guy really is really what it comes down to. We can't afford that guy's overhead that we'd be paying for. So, trying to find a way that you can stop them from giving an estimate. And then if you tell them that, hey, I don't really need an estimate as much as I'd like you to come look at a job. And if your pricing is what you said it is on the phone, then we're going to work together. So I don't want you to come out and estimate every house I do, but maybe this first one, if you'd like to meet me out at the house when you have some free time so I can show it to you. And if we're on the same page, we'll talk about doing the work. And it's awesome. Wouldn't you agree? And then after that, I won't make you come back out. I'll measure for you. I do that. You think I'm not going to get down if I need to do hardwood in 2 rooms? I'm just going to measure the rooms and say, hey, I got 2 rooms. Here's what I need. Is that you still good at $2 a foot for those rooms? Right? I'll go get the wood and get it delivered to the house and have it sitting there waiting for you. That's what we do to keep our pricing down. We make it easy on them. We make their lives easy. So that is a really big thing, is a benefit of working with you. Because if they're working with a homeowner, they got to go pick material up. They got to do all these things that can be complex. They got to do estimates in the evenings and weekends. No one likes that. By the way, where do estimates come from? Like how much, people don't just get estimates. They got to market for them. They got to spend money to do that. So that's what number one thing I find that people hate, and why I'm able to get them to come over on my team is they hate spending money on marketing and sucking at it and then like blowing money and then no one calls. And then when they do call, then the catch 22 is that if the marketing does work, they got to do estimates when they should be doing all this other stuff that actually makes life awesome. Like, being with their friends and family. They can't do that if they're out doing estimates for a bunch of goofballs like us or new flippers that get estimates and never do work. So they really do hate that. So standardized pricing, you don't have to do a bunch of estimates. The house is empty, no furniture. So if, that would matter to someone who's done retail, probably wouldn't matter. Plenty of work. I work with a group of investors. So, meanwhile, if I don't have work for you, I'll refer you to someone else. And as you start getting out there and you start getting a good referral from, say, another flipper, guess what you do in return? Is when your guy needs a little work and he's done a great job for you, you don't have another house, you say, hey, you call up the guy who, maybe gave you a good referral and say, hey, I got a really good sanding guy. Could you use him? You do that. That's an awesome thing to do for them. Keep them busy and say, hey, my buddies needs a sanding job. I'm going to hook you up with them. And then that way you keep them in your, you become someone that like they really want to work for because you've been very thoughtful. That's building relationships and being thoughtful of a good guy. So we always want to make sure a good guy stay busy. And if they need to find work because you can't keep them busy, then it does become your responsibility. Jump on the phone and hook someone up. But say, hey, if you don't know anyone, and be like, hey, do you have anyone you can refer? I got a good guy I can refer to you. I'm kind of short on like electricians. You think you could refer an electrician to me, right? And do like a swap, like a trade essentially. Lots of times if you create that relationship with another flipper, they're more than happy to share like some of their good guys with you, especially if you're giving them some of your good guys. You both are help keeping your guys busy essentially, because there's always different times of need. I buy most of the material so you don't have to put up a bunch of money. I recommend this for me. When it comes to certain things like HVAC, well, I don't usually buy the HVAC materials because you have to have a license to do that. I can't really even do that, to be upfront. There is a new way I'm working around that, but it's, I'm basically finding a way to call up. There's certain wholesalers that will sell me the product. I don't remember if it's A.E. Michaels or one of these big wholesalers that'll sell me the product without having a license, just being a contractor or saying I'm a house flipper, essentially. Whatever your LLC is, you're a business, they'll sell to you. But for the most part, I just find an HVAC guy who's going to take care of that for me because that is a product that's not easy for me to buy. But when it comes to buying like my towel, it comes to buying my hardwood, my carpet, my sheetrock, I don't need them to buy those things. And what I really don't want to do is give them a deposit because they need to buy materials, because the number one way to get ripped off in house flipping is to give money up front to contractors. If you give money up front to contractors, you will get ripped off. It's that simple. Now, I said that like it was a definite, it was like 100% of the time you'll get ripped off. So let me be clear. You won't get ripped off every time, but you'll get ripped off too often for my taste. I don't like to be ripped off for anything. I freaking hate it. And I build my whole business around not being ripped off. So because for me, I feel like it makes the business like no fun when I get ripped off for like $3,000 to $5,000 or something. It really makes the business no fun. We have enough challenges. The one variable I'd like to take out of this business is contractors running off my money. And if you logically think about it, if you give a contractor, say, a $3,000 deposit to start work, you effectively have given them your money to manage. And, would you want a contractor to manage your money? I don't know how much you know about contractors, but I can tell you that contractors in general, they're like one step above like drug addict. And often they might be one and the same, right? It might be like, I'm a contractor and I'm a drug addict. So it's the perfect combination of the worst person in the world to give my money to. So like in general, I just don't give money. And the reason people don't think this is possible is because a lot of guys are like, I need money up front or I ain't working for you. And I'm like, that's cool. That's part of what we do on the phone. If they're not willing to work with our payment terms, then that's cool. If they're like, I need $20 to get to work, that's cool. You're a fuck up and I'm not working with you. If you can't spot $20 in gas to work, you can't like work for a couple of days and then get paid, then I'm cool. But I'm not going to ask them to go buy like thousands of dollars of material and then, and float the money for that, because that would be what I would consider unreasonable on my behalf. But at the same time, what I consider unreasonable on their behalf is that they can't work, like do a small job and get paid when they're done. Like a small job, especially when I'm providing the material, all they have to do is provide the people. So if they're like, I need to get paid the end of every day, that's drug addict. That's usually code for I'm going to have a drug problem and I need money to support it, or a drinking problem, or I'm really awful with money. So someone that needs to get paid like that is the last person you want to pay like that. Someone who gets paid like that's the last person you want to give a deposit. So I personally can tell you that I rarely ever give deposits. I only have a couple scenarios where I'm willing to give deposits. With my HVAC guy who I have a history with, he did the first 5 or 10 jobs without deposits. Now he's like, hey, Mike, I need a deposit, but he holds a license. He runs a reputable company. And he's also worked for a lot of flippers, and I can confirm that. He came as a referral from someone who's like, Mike, I've worked with this guy for years and he's awesome. So like, I'm okay getting, I give him a third. So he charged me $5. I give him like maybe $1,700 to get started. He's pretty loose about it after that. He actually, because he is good with his money, he didn't drive me crazy for dollars. And, half the time he's done the job and the bill's like in my mail like a month later. So it kind of gives me a feel that this guy ain't like a complete train wreck. The people that need the deposits the most are the people that you want to give them to the least. People are going to fight you the most for them because they're the ones like my granite guy does jobs and he didn't even charge me. And he always sends me a bill. Like the biggest problem with him is he sends me the bill so late that like and my job's already been paid out. And then here comes this bill. And I'm like, holy crap, we've already sold the house and everything. So send me the bill a little sooner because I want to, like, know what I made. I might have a partner on it or something. So, and it's just, that's what good guys do. And he has worked with a few of my, what I would say, not students, but somebody who dropped my name, and then he did the same with them, and then they ripped him off. So I was like, hey man, I appreciate you do that for me, but like, you don't have to do that for anyone that I'm not going to, if I don't vouch for him, call me, I'll vouch for him. If it's you, Scott, I'm like, Scott's cool, right? Scott's going to pay you. I'm pretty sure he's a good guy. But like, I had a couple guys that were like, literally just like, one dude just gave me an estimate, this guy named Tito Markakis, and he gave me an estimate, and he's a complete con artist. And I never ended up working with him because I sniffed out that he was a con artist. He basically dropped names and told me, oh, here's guys I do all kind of work for. I don't know if he realized, like, I'm like one of the biggest flippers in town. So I just get on the phone like, hey, does this guy work for you? And they're like, that motherfucker. And I'm like, awesome. That's all I need to know. And they're like, hey, currently he's like not finished my work. And they basically told me he's a goofball. Somehow the guy remembers my name and calls my granite guy, and he's like, he was calling just granite guys. And he's like, well, I work with Mike Green. And so that my granite guy does like $5,000 in work for him, and he never pays him. And he still tries to keep friending me on Facebook. And I keep like, yo, man, don't friend me on Facebook, man. You got to pay my granite guy, you goofball. I don't even know how to get in the middle of this, but this is what guys do, unfortunately. There's a lot of guys that are really good con artists, and their big game is they love to get deposits, then start your work so they can get deposits, so they get additional money, and then they go do the same thing, and then they ghost out on you, and they start doing the same thing. And they're playing basically like this money shell game, essentially, where they're just running around collecting new deposits while they're not really completing any of the work. And it's essentially like a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme of deposits is what it is. So I don't like to be in Ponzi schemes with contractors. The guys I work with aren't really like, give me a third down kind of guy. So I'm just like, hey, you don't need it, I'll buy materials. So I do the material thing because it's really easy for me to buy the materials. Tell, hey, give me a material list of what you need. I'll call Home Depot and get Home Depot to deliver it to the house for you. Now, they could still steal the materials. They could run off with them. But in my experience, the guys who say that's cool and it's like, yeah, no biggie, are usually not thieves. It's the guys who are fighting like, I don't work like that because, I don't want to get ripped off. The people who are worried the most about getting ripped off are the most likely to rip you off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The guys that are most trusting are usually the guys you can trust. I know, does that sound weird, right? It makes sense, but because it's just a psychological thing. People, it's like the guy who always thinks his girl's cheating on him, usually probably cheating on her. Right? I don't know if you've ever seen that. I have. The people that are the most suspicious are always the ones that are least trustworthy. So with that being said, I think that that covers a lot of what we can work on, and I hope that gives you a lot to kind of follow up on. And key to this is like just following through with this and just getting on the phone and working it, and knowing that as you build this team, there's nothing stopping you from flipping houses and nothing stopping you from taking your newfound skill to find deals and monetizing. Because finding deals is step one. Step two is actually taking those deals and converting them to cash and converting them into money, right? Or actually, is that step four in our funnel, right? Our house flipping, income funnel, right? This is a big part of it right here. There's a lot to it, though. I mean, I hope this was pretty thorough. I know that like this is more thorough than like any training I've ever participated in. And I do, the reason I think it's so thorough is it's not like a training that someone gives. This is actually what I'm using in my business. And it's the level that we did things when we were doing a lot of houses in my old business, because we needed a lot of contractors, and we found that like contractors have shelf lives, and like we can get a good guy and he worked for like a year or two, and he, like anything, they want to make more money and grow. But what happens when they want to make more money and grow? Well, they can't keep doing $2, a foot where they got to find a way to make $250 a foot. So they go get their home improvement license. They'll start working for retail people. That's part of their journey, right? They want to grow in their lives. Now, I will tell you that every time you get like every 20 contractors you pick up, there's one that'll just work for you for $2 a foot for the rest of their life. And that's the guy that you really want to treat with respect and make sure that he's part of your family. Because my HVAC guy is that guy, my HVAC guy / plumber that was referred to me from my electrician. And the only fear I have of him leaving is that he probably will be retiring in a couple of years. He's over 60, and he's not going to do this forever. And he's been pretty good with his money. And he's learning the house flip, unfortunately. And I taught him, so that's kind of he's starting to flip some deals. So I guess when you teach your best guy how to house flip, you might be working yourself out of a good contractor, but it's still the right thing to do. He's a good guy. He's spent a lot of years in with me, really helped me kind of grow my business. So I'm happy to help him do that. And he basically just seen me flip so many houses that the guy has learned how to flip houses, just like doing the plumbing on he's probably done the plumbing on 400 plus of my houses. So yeah. Some point you're probably like, hey, this ain't that hard. At least for him, you only have to watch 400 houses get flipped to figure it out. From that is one way to do it for free. You don't have to pay for coaching. Just it only took him 6 years though, so it's the 6-year version. And he just does a couple here and there. He's not like setting the world on fire, but he's doing some stuff. And for him, like he's been good with his money, so I have to give him the ability to do more of this. And he hasn't said he's quitting yet. I'm just anticipating it because I know like how long is he going to do this for. So with that in mind, any questions about anything or anything you'd like me to explain any differently?
No, yeah, like you said, this is pretty thorough. It's a lot to think about. I'm gonna definitely review it again and start working. I think I have a few